Everything we need already exists inside of us. We hold the key to open the door to discover who we are and why we exist. Conversations help us find that truth. Relationships are vital. IDKY hopes to ignite your curiosity and perhaps give you courage to open the door. Welcome back to the IDKY podcast. This is session 2 with Shawn Schaefer. He told us about his mindsets in session 1, the CAN mindset, the pursuit of happiness, trust, and sacrificial love. And those were interesting. And I hope all of you will think about considering choosing some mindsets for yourself. So in session 2, we're going to talk about how he met his wife. And there's a lot of people that know the story, but anybody that's new to this audience or that has never met Shawn is probably interested in hearing some of the details. So Shawn, tell us how you met your wife, Kelly.
Kelly's version of the story would be something to the effect of, I stalked her. But that's a slightly exaggerated version of the story. The long version would be, I was a senior in college at the University of Illinois. It was January of 2000, and one morning woke up, was eating breakfast. I'm pretty confident that was Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And
Our family was a fan of that one too.
And so, in front of ESPN, watching SportsCenter, that was kind of like the morning routine as I got ready for the day. And anyway, on this particular morning, they had aired a story about a car accident that had happened. And the segment was about 10 minutes long. And in the segment, they were interviewing Kelly Craig, as well as her boyfriend at the time, Luke Recker. And the reason it was on ESPN is Luke had played basketball for Indiana University. And so when the accident happened, it was national or public news. And so they interviewed the two of them throughout this segment. And I'm watching this segment, and I'm just in awe of who Kelly is as a person, because 6 months earlier, so this would have been July of 1999, her world is turned upside down. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and her family had been on a vacation out in Durango, Colorado at a dude ranch. And one of the last nights, her and her brother, Jason, who was a couple of years younger than Kelly. So Kelly was probably, I should know this, she would have been 19, I believe, and I think Jason was probably 17, and as well as her boyfriend, Luke. The three of them were going into the county fair, and they were offered a ride in this back of a pickup truck, and they decided against that because they thought that would be dangerous. And so they climbed into this sedan that one of the workers from the Dude Ranch was driving. And so on the way to the county fair, and another car coming from the other direction had crossed over the center line and crashed into their vehicle, as well as one or two others. And so the vehicle was driven by a 21-year-old who was intoxicated. And so driving under the influence, and the driver of Kelly's vehicle died at the scene, and her brother Jason was left brain damaged, and Kelly herself was left with a fracture in her C4 vertebrae, which meant she's a quadriplegic. Her boyfriend had some injuries that were fortunately relatively minor, and there was a fifth person in the vehicle that I don't think had any injuries of significance. So as I'm watching this segment on ESPN, throughout the 10 minutes, I'm realizing that the interview is asking questions where it would have been easy for Kelly to say something negatively about a few different people. Certainly the drunk driver, the basketball coach at the time for Indiana, his name was Bob Knight. And there's a part of the story where it wasn't so favorable on him, but she didn't choose to say that. And then there's a part of it where she could have said some things about her boyfriend, Luke, at the time, who later became her ex-boyfriend, but she never did. So again, getting back to, I'm captivated by this person who has this positive energy, who took the high road with the way she responded to some of the questions. And I became sort of a fan at that point.
Where did that come from? How did she get to that place where she didn't have to say it out loud that close to the accident?
That's a really good question. Kelly would tell you that after the accident, her path forward, her faith was her compass, and certainly
before the accident as well, or
well, she would say that she was a person of faith, but she would acknowledge that it wasn't maybe always at the center for her.
okay.
And she would also say, after the accident, there were many a times where people were saying nice things, encouraging things, giving gifts, offering words of encouragement or scripture, and she knew that they were the right things, but she at certain points wasn't in the right space to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no question there was a period of time where the road back was incredibly difficult, not only physically but mentally. She would tell you her parents for sure were like this, had this impeccable strength where it was never going to be a pity party. It was always going to be like, let's make the best of the circumstances and let's keep moving forward. And so, yeah, I think between faith and her parents, I think that's what enabled her 6 months later to do that. And it's remarkable. And really, she had to get to a place pretty early on with having a heart of forgiveness. And that to me is kind of what's astonishing, because there's not a day that goes by where she doesn't wake up and I feel like, oh, maybe that was a bad dream. And then she looks over and there's the wheelchair. And every day has 100 more challenges for her than you or I. Mm-hmm. Every single thing requires extra effort. And so it would be really easy, I feel like, to get to a place of just having animosity towards the drunk driver. And somehow she does. I mean, that's the part about her that I think is extraordinary. I mean, it's just not something she allows herself to.
Some people will never get there in their whole lifetime.
Right.
And she got there very quickly as a young woman.
19-year-old, yeah. I call it rise above.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what she's done. And
yes.
After watching the segment, what I did was I went to my classes that day, but I had this intent to be home. There was a 6 p.m. Sports Center. So Sports Center didn't loop like it does now. It had set times. Okay. And back then, there was no DVR. It was just a VCR and a VHS tape. We didn't even have a DVD player. So my plan was to get back and eat dinner and put the VHS tape in the recorder, which is what I did, and record that segment and watch it over, so that I was just kind of hoping to pick up on some details that I didn't the first time around, with the hope of just writing a letter and just saying, hey, I saw this. I have a great deal of admiration for you, and just kind of wish her well, so to speak. So that was the intent. It was
admiration to the quality of her character.
Yes.
Is what you saw.
Yes.
And were you pretty strong in your faith walk at that time as well?
I would say no. Okay. I grew up in a household with strong faith. Okay. My parents, my grandparents, both sets of grandparents, I went for K through 12 to Catholic schools. It was always a part of our lives. But then when I went to the University of Illinois, which is a public school, large public school, had a great college experience. I was the oldest kid in my family, and I have two younger sisters, Shannon and Kelly, and my parents did a really good job of keeping me naive to the world for a lot of my younger years, which is a blessing in a lot of ways. So when I went to college, I was exposed to a lot. And at that point, it was a healthy exposure, like realizing, oh, wow, there's people of a lot of different faiths and different ethnicities and different backgrounds. And I finished in 4 years, but I stayed for a graduate year. So in my 5 years at the University of Illinois, I grew a lot in ways that I think are really healthy. But I didn't make, let's say, going to church or practicing my faith a consistent part of my day, so to speak. But it was always there. It wasn't as if I had turned away from it.
Yeah.
But certainly if I looked at my life, as soon as I had finished up college, there were some other things that happened in my life that brought me back for different reasons. And then from that point forward, particularly after meeting Kelly, it's been exponentially stronger.
Do you feel like touching on any of those
Which part?
difficulties that you
You
brought you
mean,
back to your faith?
so January of 2000, I was a senior. That's when I saw this story about the accident,
Okay.
right? Well, let me rewind. In 1994, I was a junior in high school. And in December, we had a Christmas dance, and I fell asleep at the wheel the day after the Christmas dance. Mid-afternoon, I was taking my tuxedo back. I crossed over the center line, and I hit another vehicle. Fortunately, that person, there was just the driver, no passengers, and they had some minor injuries, but I got the worst of it. I got the steering wheel in my face and in my chest. And so I was hospitalized for a week. I discharged, but there was a month of my life that I have no memory of. And I interacted with people. I was apparently mean and kind of rude and obnoxious to the people who were trying to help me. But
And that wasn't characteristic of you.
no,
Yeah, it was
no.
the injury.
Yeah. So I think the difficult part was the neurosurgeon couldn't tell my parents specifically like a time frame or what this was going to look like. So I'm not really even sure what the diagnosis was, but I don't remember that Christmas. I don't remember my 17th birthday, and I don't remember a lot of things that went on for that month. But that changed me as a person. I mean, my parents and sisters would tell you that I was a different person on the other side of it. When I, a month later, sort of came back, my perspective on things had changed considerably. So if we look at like that, I think that's part of what made me so acutely aware of what I was watching with Kelly's accident. And then, so January of 2000, let's say September of 2000, my sister had been dating a guy named Tim for a few years. And in that fall, when I was going back for my fifth year, my last year at the University of Illinois, just as I was headed back, he was diagnosed with lymphoma cancer. And so for 10 months, he battled it. And in fact, when I was home over Christmas break in January, he was said to be cancer-free, and we had gone out to celebrate. And then a couple months later in March, they found out that the cancer was back, and it was worse than it was before. And I would say it was early June, maybe even late May. But I was at home at my parents' house, and there was a day where Tim was over with Shannon, and he was taken away in an ambulance. He was having trouble breathing. And from that point forward, he never left the hospital. He was hospitalized for what was probably 4 or 5 weeks. And then July 3rd of 2001, he passed. And it changed the lives of anyone who knew him, specifically my sister, my parents. It had a profound impact on me and getting back to faith and searching for why. And so yeah, that we talk about significant life events that shape us and change us as a person,
Right.
And that for sure was one of them. So
Okay, so let's get back to Kelly.
Kelly,
then.
sure.
The interview.
Yeah.
You were getting
Yeah.
home to watch the second one, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so even after replaying it, back then, if you wanted to call someone, you would call 411 and you would request, I think it was 411, to get someone's phone number. And so I had called to ask for Kelly Craig in Jasper, Indiana. No record of that. So then I asked, are there any Craigs that live in that area? And they gave me, I think, 13 numbers. And I tried all of them, and no one was a relative. No one knew her. Several people were annoyed by my call, probably thought I was a prank caller or whatever. Anyway, what I didn't know at the time, but found out many years later, is her mom had remarried. She had a different last name, and that's who Kelly lived with. And so that was kind of the curveball that I didn't know.
Yeah.
But that's what was preventing me from being able to send my letter. So we had looked. I had a good friend, Luke, who was my college roommate, the best man in our wedding, and he was really along for the journey with me. What ended up being 7 years, and it wasn't as if I was consumed. Like life was going on. Was dating other people at different times, but somehow in a span of 7 years, I had always kind of held on to this idea that at some point I would get to deliver a letter or send a letter. It was April of 2007, and I got a phone call the Thursday or Friday before Easter weekend at work saying, "Hey, we need you to be at a client site near Indianapolis the following Monday through Wednesday." And so anyway, that Saturday night, so this is like the Saturday night before Easter, I'm at my parents' house, and something clicks for me, like a light bulb goes off, because I never really had a reason to travel east. And so I got on their computer to look at the map and figure out that Jasper wasn't really on the way, but it also wasn't really far out of the way. So I decided on my trip back, I was just going to drive through town, and I felt like it wasn't a very big town, so I just thought someone has to know where she lives. And so I'm driving into town. It's around sunset. And
What year is this?
2007. So April of 2000. So
Okay.
7 years had passed.
Okay.
And this is where like the timing of a lot of things in life, when you look in the rear view, I mean, God's timing, if I had been able to send the letter back when I had first attempted to, neither she nor I was in the right space or right place in life. We might have corresponded and maybe stayed friends or something, but we would not have dated. In fact, we joke about growing up in high school, we would never have dated because she was always dating, we'll say, prominent athletes. Like first it was in her class, then it was the grade above, then it was the grade above that, then it was Mr. Indiana and the state of, or in the state of Indiana, Mr. Basketball or whatever. So I, on the other hand, is a function of time. I didn't date until I was 16. I didn't meet Kelly till I was 29, but in 13 years, I ended up dating a lot of people. I would learn from those relationships kind of what I was looking for, right? And but if there was a common denominator, there were three girls that I dated that were valedictorians of their high school when they were going to school. So, like I said, the younger versions of us, we would not have
connected.
No. We meet in April of 2007. When I got to Jasper, there was a Walgreens, and so I pulled in and I asked, and none of the workers knew her. And so it doesn't make any logical sense, but I asked if I could borrow their phone book. And I took the phone book next door to Staples, and I made a photocopy of the page in the phone book that had all the Craigs. Keep in mind, what's totally illogical is that I had already called these people years ago. So I'm not really sure what my thought process was, but I took the photocopy to the cashier to pay, and the cashier had a name tag on that said Kelly. And so I had said to her, do you happen to know where Kelly Craig lives? And she just kind of didn't answer and kind of looked at me curiously. And so then I felt the need to say, well, let me just explain, like, I'm not from here. I'm from out of town, and I just am trying to deliver a letter. And then she looked at me almost with like a stranger kind of dumbfounded like look. And I said, okay, let me just make a quick trip to my car. At which point I brought the letter in just to kind of validate that there was truth to what I was saying. And then she had made a phone call quickly to, I don't remember if it was a friend or her mom, but someone was able to give her directions, and she handed them to me. And sure enough, I was probably 7 minutes away from her house, and I delivered the letter to the mailbox. I was super excited about this. And so when I pulled away, I called my cousin Andrew, and I said, Andrew, I did it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I delivered the letter. And he said, well, how did that happen? I said, well, I just put it in her mailbox. And he said, Shawn, you always talk about doing things 100%. Like, don't put it in the mailbox, go to the door. I said, you're right. And so I U-turned, went and got it out of the mailbox, walked into the door. And that's the part where I hadn't prepared. Like, all of a sudden I'm standing at the door, and I'm sort of like shaking uncontrollably. I'm super nervous. Knock on the door, and her mom had answered. And I just said, is Kelly Craig live here? And she said, yeah, but she's unfortunately not available to come to the door right now. I didn't know it at the time, but she had put on one of those facial masks, the kind that make you look like an alien. And so she was not available. So anyway, I just said to her mom, well, hey, I want to deliver this card. Could you just give it to her? She said, sure, no problem. And then she was thoughtful enough to say, well, if she would want to contact you, is there a way that she could reach you? And I said, well, at the bottom of the card, I had put something to the effect of, here's my phone number, but I'm sure you get a lot of fan mail. Please don't feel obligated to call. And then 10 minutes later, I was leaving town. I was at a gas station in Huntingburg, and my phone rang. And sure enough, it was Kelly, and she had read the card, and she just said, I know you still have a drive back home, but just wanted to see if you'd be willing to come back to visit for a short time. And so, I mean, at that point, that's a no-brainer. I said, yes, see you soon. And so on my way back, I didn't want to show up empty-handed again, not really prepared for the visit. So I found a CVS. I walked around, and I found a vanilla-scented candle and some chocolates, and went to the door, and found out weeks later that she doesn't really like candles. So not the best first gift. Maybe she liked the chocolates. I don't know. So, but we did visit for a couple hours until about 10:30 or 11 that night, and then and in that time, it almost felt like a conspiracy. She has 4 brothers and her parents, and it was as if every 15 minutes a new person came into the room, almost to kind of evaluate, to make sure that
who is this guy?
Yeah, right. And I guess reasonably so. I look back on it, and never once did it seem strange to me. But in hindsight, going to the door at a house when it's basically sunset, not the norm. But yeah, so they visited for a short time, then they'd leave the room, and we would talk again. And at the end of all that, I gave her a hug, and we exchanged information. And then I drove home, but it was so late that I couldn't call anyone to share my excitement because people were asleep. And so I just was on cloud 9 on my own, got home, took a nap for a few hours, went to work the next day, and wrote an email later that day saying, appreciated the chance to visit, enjoyed meeting you, and a few other things. And then at the end, I had just put, P.S. My only regret is that I wish I had held the hug longer. And I was doing that intentionally, I just kind of wanted to see what response I would get. And later that night, she had emailed back and said some things. And then at the end, she put, P.S. I share the same regret you do. And so that was the door open that I kind of needed.
Yeah.
And so that allowed us to talk about coming back to visit. And then it went well from there.
And how long did you date before you got married?
We were dating for 15 months, all long distance. And so that was its own challenge.
Yeah.
Because she didn't drive. And so I would come visit her for the weekend, or sometimes I would come pick her up and then drive her back to St. Louis. And then we'd spend some time with my family and friends and then drive her back and go back. So, I mean, I would say it would be common maybe once or twice a month that we would spend a weekend. The nice part was the time we were spending was quality time for a chunk of time. Like we were putting other things on pause. The hard part was the work that I was doing at the time required a good amount of travel. So I was traveling during the week, oftentimes only to turn around and travel on the weekend, which was not fun, but worth it.
Yeah.
And that was the benefit of being older. When we met, I was 29.
Yeah.
And so, and she was 27. And at that point, you kind of know, like, if this isn't working, like,
it
move
shows
on.
up.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it 15 months, and then I proposed to her, and then we were engaged for a year. And so after not quite 2.5 years of knowing each other, I had moved here, and we started life together. So
it's an amazing story.
Thank you.
It is.
It's all glory to God. I mean, there's no
I remember
other.
where I was when I heard about Kelly's accident. You know how you remember where you were, who you were with. I remember exactly where I was. And I just remember the day the wedding picture came out. And there couldn't have been a dry eye in the whole town of Jasper, and anybody that knew Kelly, how this beautiful story evolved and how God just knew how to get you two together. And it's just amazing what he can do to bring the people together. It just is such a fascinating story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for being here for session 2. Join us. We have another episode coming up, session 3. We're going to learn more about Shawn's story. He's not done yet. He's got more. It's fantastic. Stay blessed, y'all.
Thank you.